What if everything you learned about Stonehenge was a carefully constructed lie? For over a century, the story has remained unchanged. Local farmers hauled stones across the English countryside. They stacked them into a ring to track the sun. It was simple. It was primitive. And it was completely wrong. The altar stone at the heart of Stonehenge was always said to come from Wales. That was the official position for decades. Researchers who suggested otherwise were dismissed, ridiculed, and pushed to the margins of their field. But new forensic evidence has shattered that narrative entirely. The altar stone didn't come from Wales. It came from northeast Scotland, over 450 miles away. And that single revelation threatens to unravel everything we thought we knew about ancient Britain. How do you transport a 6-ton slab across an entire island without wheels, without metal tools, without draft animals? Why did the builders deliberately choose the hardest possible route? And why was the truth suppressed for so long? This is the mystery of Stonehenge. And today, we're going to crack it wide open. The stone that changed everything. The altar stone isn't just another rock in the circle, it lies at the exact center of the monument, the focal point around which everything else was arranged. For generations, textbooks, museums, and documentaries all told the same story. This stone came from the Preseli Hills in Wales. But something never quite added up. As far back as the mid-20th century, a handful of geologists noticed inconsistencies in the mineral composition. They proposed that the altar might have a Scottish origin. Their work was quickly dismissed. The establishment had settled on the Welsh narrative, and it wasn't interested in complications. Fast forward to recent months. New studies using advanced geochemical fingerprinting and precise mineral age testing have definitively traced the altar stone to the Orcadian Basin in northeast Scotland. The evidence is undeniable. What was once fringe speculation has become established fact. Think about what this means. The most important stone at Stonehenge traveled over 700 kilometers across rivers, mountains, and open sea. This wasn't a local farming project. This was something far more ambitious, far more organized, the impossible journey. Let's examine the logistics. Around 2600 to 2400 BC, technology was limited to stone, wood, rope, and human muscle. There were no wheels, no iron tools, no animals strong enough to haul multi-ton cargo. Yet somehow this massive block ended up at the heart of Stonehenge. The mainstream explanation sounds reasonable on the surface. The stone was dragged on sledges, rolled over timber, and floated on rafts. Experimental archaeologists have even demonstrated small-scale reconstructions with volunteer teams. But scale matters. Dragging a small block a few hundred meters on flat ground with modern footwear is one thing. Transporting a 6-ton slab over hundreds of miles across rugged terrain is something else entirely. Each segment of the journey presents fresh obstacles, and there is no evidence of continuous infrastructure capable of supporting such an expedition. Picture the reality. From quarries in Scotland, the stone would need to be hauled across steep inclines where timber rollers would sink into mud or snap under pressure. The route would involve crossing vast waterways like the Tay and the Forth, requiring vessels capable of carrying multi-ton cargo through treacherous currents. Even modern engineers would struggle with this challenge. A 6-ton slab equals the weight of 2 SUVs. Hauling it 700 kilometers without roads or machinery is a logistical nightmare. The official explanation asks us to believe that farmers accomplished this with ropes and patience. Something about that story doesn't hold together. The pattern of deliberate difficulty. Here's where the mystery deepens. The builders didn't just transport one stone from far away. They made a habit of it. The smaller bluestones came from the Preseli Hills in southwest Wales, over 150 miles distant. The Great Sarsen stones, though closer, were selected from a particular ridge in the Marlborough Downs rather than from countless other options nearby. This pattern reveals something crucial. The builders weren't just stacking whatever rock lay at hand. They were making deliberate choices about origin. Each stone's place of birth mattered. Each journey was part of a larger design. Why go to such extraordinary lengths? Perhaps the stones represented alliances between distant regions. Preseli for Wales, Marlborough for southern England, or Cadian stone for Scotland. Perhaps they were relics of pilgrimage, carrying the spiritual weight of journeys across sacred landscapes. Or perhaps the stones themselves were believed to possess unique properties. Acoustic resonance, magnetic qualities, spiritual force. Properties that made them irreplaceable despite the impossible difficulty of obtaining them. The hidden network. Stonehenge was never an isolated project. When we examine the wider evidence, the monument begins to resemble a hub in a vast network stretching across Britain and beyond. Archaeological discoveries reveal striking patterns. Pottery styles found in distant regions share remarkable similarities. Burial practices echo across Britain and Ireland. Ceremonial sites from Avebury to Orkney align with the same solar and lunar cycles as Stonehenge. This suggests a shared cosmology guiding communities separated by hundreds of miles. What kind of social structures could coordinate such flows of people, goods, and ideas? Were there confederations of tribes bound by ritual authority? Was there an elite class of spiritual leaders orchestrating events across the island? Could there have been maritime networks, long-distance seafaring communities connecting coasts and rivers in ways archaeologists have underestimated? If such networks existed, the comfortable picture of isolated farmers building monuments through trial and error collapses entirely. Something far more sophisticated was at work. Secrets beneath the surface. Modern technology has revealed layers of Salisbury Plain that the eye alone could never see. Ground-penetrating radar, LiDAR sweeps, and magnetometry surveys have mapped beneath the grass, exposing a hidden record of ditches, pits, and buried structures extending far beyond the visible stones. What emerges is not a single monument, but an entire ceremonial landscape. Massive earthworks, alignments of post holes, traces of henge complexes. Stonehenge was only one piece of a far larger design. But here's the troubling part. When these discoveries are reported, they're often wrapped in careful disclaimers. Anomalies that look like deliberate pits become natural depressions. Linear patterns resembling avenues get described as post-depositional disturbances. The evidence pointing to complexity is softened, downplayed, or pushed aside. Scans show Stonehenge was built in phases over centuries. Stones were rearranged, pits were dug and refilled, ditches were recut. Some features were deliberately dismantled. What if large parts of the original design were intentionally buried? Who would make such choices and why? Masters of the sky. Every year, thousands gather at Stonehenge for the midsummer sunrise. The sun breaks the horizon and shines perfectly through the stones with astonishing accuracy. On the opposite side of the year, the midwinter sunset aligns just as precisely. These weren't accidents. They were built into the design from the beginning, but the solstice alignments are only the beginning. Evidence suggests the builders also tracked lunar cycles, marking the moon's extreme positions. The Aubrey holes encircling the site may have served as a lunar calculator, predicting eclipses with remarkable accuracy. Mainstream explanations often reduce this to trial and error, but the precision is too exact for guesswork. The midsummer alignment today is accurate within half a degree. Achieving such precision requires decades of observation, careful records, and sophisticated geometry. This implies mathematical knowledge far beyond what textbooks assign to people living 5,000 years ago. And Stonehenge isn't unique. Across Europe, megalithic sites reveal the same obsession with celestial events. Newgrange in Ireland, Karnak in France, the temples of Malta. These weren't isolated farmers tinkering with rocks. They were part of a tradition of skywatching stretching across continents. Evidence in the stone. When most people picture Stonehenge, they imagine rough blocks dragged into place with brute force. But close examination reveals a different story. Many sarsen stones show joints so tight you can barely slip a knife blade between them. Some bluestones bear polished surfaces and smoothed edges, suggesting far more skill than crude pounding with stone axes. Archaeologists point to hammerstones and antler picks as the only available tools, yet some marks don't fit that explanation. Certain bluestones display shapes resembling drilled sockets rather than random chisel marks. Some sarsens show depressions that appear carved deliberately to create locking joints. These are features we associate with later engineering, not primitive construction. Even more striking is the variety of techniques visible across different stones. Some were left roughly dressed while others were shaped with surprising precision. This suggests not a single approach, but multiple methods applied by people with different levels of expertise. Was there a specialized class of craftsmen whose techniques have been lost to time? Echoes of forgotten knowledge. Legends have always surrounded Stonehenge. Folklore speaks of giants and wizards, tales of stones brought from distant lands by supernatural means. These myths sound like fairy tales, yet they mirror what science has now confirmed. Keystones really were transported from extraordinary distances, a feat so unlikely that it entered cultural memory as the work of beings beyond human power. Archaeology itself shows that Stonehenge wasn't built on empty ground. Long before the familiar stone circle existed, the site contained earlier monuments stretching back to 5000 BC. Earthworks, timber circles, and post alignments preceded the stones by millennia. Older barrows and cursus monuments surround the area. Beyond Salisbury Plain, evidence of even older traditions complicates the picture. Submerged landscapes off the British coast once held settlements now lost beneath rising seas. In Orkney, massive stone temples predate many of Stonehenge's phases. Complex ceremonial architecture was flourishing in the far north, long before the monument took its final form. Did the Neolithic communities who raised Stonehenge invent every technique themselves? Or did they inherit fragments of a much older tradition, echoes of a lost culture that vanished with rising seas and shifting climates? The gatekeepers. The altar stone provides a perfect case study in how knowledge gets controlled. Decades ago, geologists suggested it might not be Welsh, pointing to mineral inconsistencies. Their proposals were dismissed. The Welsh origin became dogma, repeated in textbooks and documentaries without question. Only now, with irrefutable forensic evidence, has the Scottish origin been confirmed. Which raises uncomfortable questions. Was this simply a matter of waiting for better technology? Or was the establishment reluctant to rewrite its story because doing so threatened comfortable narratives? Archaeology doesn't operate in a vacuum. It's shaped by funding, reputations, and peer review. The system rewards safe conclusions and punishes challenges to accepted wisdom. Researchers who propose uncomfortable ideas often find themselves branded as fringe. Only when new technologies make their findings undeniable does the mainstream reluctantly adjust. Not every act of caution is malicious. Skepticism protects against wild speculation. But when caution becomes inertia and inertia becomes dogma, we lose sight of what matters most: the truth. Conclusion. The neat classroom version of Stonehenge no longer holds. The altar stone alone proves that something far more complex was happening in ancient Britain than we've been told. If the mainstream story doesn't add up, what alternatives deserve consideration? Inherited knowledge from lost cultures, advanced engineering techniques we no longer understand, maritime networks connecting distant coasts. None of these theories can be proven outright, but all push us to ask bigger questions. Was Stonehenge really the work of isolated farmers? Or was it the culmination of sophisticated traditions stretching back millennia and spanning the length of Britain? The evidence is out there, buried beneath the grass and locked in the stones themselves. The question is whether we'll finally be allowed to see it. What do you think? Was Stonehenge built by connected maritime cultures, engineers with forgotten techniques, or communities preserving the legacy of a lost civilization? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this investigation, subscribe and hit the notification bell. We have more mysteries to uncover. Thanks for watching, thanks for thinking, and as always, stay curious.